Hi, welcome back on what is quite an exciting day. I've been waiting to get stuck into this project for quite some time, and today's the day. This stretch behind me here and down there is going to be a brand new border that we're going to be planting today. I'm going to get some shrubs in here. It's going to be used for cutting to assemble nice flower arrangements, and I will be using hopefully some of this foliage in my wedding bouquet later this year. So yes, it's going to be a shrub border on what is actually quite a tricky patch of ground, because I can't grow many cut flowers or edibles here because I get quite a bit of competition from that hedge there behind me. It's quite a tall hedge. So in this video today we'll talk about which plants I'm going to be planting, look at the preparation and planting of a shrub border, and then we'll talk a little bit about the aftercare tips and advice as well. So I can't wait to get stuck in, so I'm going to go grab some tools. Now, I've already done quite a bit of work on this border to remove some of the really woody weeds. I get quite a few brambles that pop up and also suckers from the Prunus spinosa. But to start with today, I need to get a few more brambles out, and also this hebe. It's getting quite old and woody, and I've already moved it once and I don't think I really want it there. So I'm just going to get some of the last of the weeds out and start to clear the space, rake it over and see what we're dealing with. This is a mattock. It has a bit of an axe at one end and then a bit like a plough with a sharpish edge at the other, and it's fantastic for getting out tough weeds like brambles. I don't want to get too close to the roots of this, which is a Spiraea. It has really beautiful sprays of white flowers in the springtime, and this one is definitely a shrub that's going to stay. I've had it on the allotment for quite a few years now, but I just need to get that thug out. So yeah, you just use it with your body weight, and quite quickly you can get under the ground and dig it out. It's always better with suckers to actually rip it out rather than cutting. Otherwise it's just going to really invigorate the growth if you cut it. So we'll be trying to get as much of the root out as we can. So I pruned back the hebe and it's time to get it out. It's just too old and woody, and it's probably a little bit more shaded here than it'd like, and I'd rather just, if I want another one, start a new one from scratch. So I just got my fork, pronging it, tweezing it, and there's also some bramble in here as well. So what I'm trying to do is get right under there, right under the roots. So hopefully I should be able to just lift it out in a sec. So what shrubs am I going to be planting? Now, these are shrubs that I've chosen for their leaf interest. They look really pretty, they're going to look gorgeous mixed with flowers on a table decoration or in a vase at home, but they're also going to be evergreen. They will give that edge of the border a nice backdrop in winter and give the birds more places to shelter. My choice number one is this. It's called Pittosporum tenuifolium, and it's got these gorgeous dark, almost purpley black stems with oval leaves that have a bit of a crinkle and white veining running through it. I love Pittosporum because they just look gorgeous mixed with dahlias and all sorts of flowers. Can you see there? This is a 5 litre pot size, although the pot's actually just fallen off. But yes, this is one of my favourite shrubs, I think. It does have a very small white flower that smells quite nice in the spring, and it will grow quite big if you want it to. You know, if I wasn't going to be clipping it regularly, it could easily reach up to 4 metres, I believe, and at least 2 metres in width. But, you know, we're going to be keeping it trim and tidy, and if you just want yours as a little shrub, you can, you know, cut it back each year, Make sure you don't prune it in the winter time though, because these are quite sensitive to very cold temperatures. So if you wanted to prune it, you want to be doing that in the spring and the summer months really, never in the winter. These are semi-hardy. I mean, they'll tolerate frost, but if it gets past sort of -7, -8, that's when you might get a little bit of dieback, a little bit of damage. It shouldn't kill it if the plant's quite mature, but yeah, it's one thing to watch out for. So for that reason, you want to plant it in quite a sheltered spot away from really cold, bitter winds. So somewhere next to a wall or a fence, it gets a lot of sun. This one will be in light shade. It'll be facing east, so it'll get all that morning sunshine and then dip into light shade over the afternoon, which should be absolutely fine for it. So that's my choice number 1. Choice number 2 is very familiar, another Pittosporum. This one's called Pittosporum Elizabeth, and can you see there it's got a bit of white variegation running through it, and as the temperature gets colder in the winter time, you actually also get some pink edges to it as well. But yes, it's another Pittosporum, treated basically exactly the same way as the other one. This one's just got a more of a sort of silvery, almost eucalyptus type green colour to it, whereas tenuifolium is much more of a true green. One of the shrubs I've actually already planted in the ground. I got it a few months ago and I just wanted to get it in the ground so I didn't have to worry about it being potted. And that is a Cotinus, and it's the variety called Royal Purple. It has these very round, oval, sort of purple leaves. It is deciduous, so this one doesn't give me much interest in the winter. But its common name is the smoke bush because in the autumn it goes this really gorgeous kind of colour with oranges and copper colours, but otherwise it is purple, so you get that double whammy of different colours, and you get a big spike of sort of smoky coloured sort of orangey copper flowers in the late summer, I believe. I don't know if mine will flower this summer, but I'm not too worried about that. I mainly like it for the foliage. A few other plants that I'll be planting aren't actually big shrubs, but I love my ferns, and this is one of my favourites. In fact, it is the one that I have tattooed there on my wrist. It's called Dryopteris erythrosora Brilliance. There you go, Dryopteris Brilliance. So it's just gorgeous. I love it. And in the springtime, you get this new foliage come up that's like a yellowy, orangey copper colour before it turns green. And I know fern leaves might not be very popular in sort of wedding or flower bouquets because they like a lot of water and they might dry up and get crispy maybe quite quickly. But I love ferns, and because it's part shade, I think they'll grow really well there at the front of the border, in front of all those shrubs, just to give the front edge a bit of softness. And behind me here, I've got a eucalyptus. This is gunii, which if I was to not cut it, it can grow into a whomping great big tree, like, 20, 30 metres easily. So I will be pruning this to keep it tidy and to stop that from happening. It's always the young new foliage that is very round and coin shaped. As the plant matures, if you don't prune it, the leaves actually start to turn longer. But yes, this one I actually picked up on the reduced section, so it desperately wants to go in the ground, and eucalyptus grow very, very quickly, and also they're very thirsty plants, so I will be making sure this one gets a bit more room away from the other shrubs so it doesn't compete for moisture. And also, I've got that big hedge behind me, so this one's going to be very thirsty and need a lot of water over the summer months to keep it actively growing. But it's just such a classic for floristry arrangements because of that gorgeous foliage. And also it has really nice pretty little seed heads as well that I don't think many people know about, so definitely one to grow for your arrangements. And up here that's already planted is my Spiraea, and it's a white flowering one, and it has lots of delicate small flowers that arch over in the springtime, and it probably also makes great foliage for filling your flower arrangements as well. This one you can hard prune after it's flowered to keep it a good sort of height. I haven't actually pruned my Spiraea for quite a while, but I think common practice is to prune it at least once a year after it's flowered, which I may do to make sure I'm getting plenty of light to all my other shrubs and keep this one young, vigorous and healthy. It is looking a bit of a funny shape, so yes, I will give this one a good prune after it's finished flowering in sort of April, May time. There is actually another shrub that I don't yet have that I'm looking to buy to either add to the border or put somewhere else on the allotment, and that is a Physocarpus opulifolius Diablo, and it has these gorgeous red leaves and pinky white flowers, and I particularly love it for the foliage. This one again isn't evergreen, so it will drop its leaves in the autumn time, but I think it's got that really dramatic sort of dark foliage that really contrasts orange colours and pale apple green colours really well. So I need to try and get my hands on that, and the good thing about that one is I believe you can really hard prune it at the end of each season every year, but it can get to about 6 foot high, so you do get a lot of foliage to play with each season. Just need to find myself one. So the preparation is pretty much done. I've got most of those horrible weeds out. I've taken away that Hebe shrub that I no longer need, and now it's time for the fun bit, which is spotting the plants. And that is a process really important. We're going to place the plants where we want them before we plant them, which is quite important because it gives you an idea of how it's going to look. Whereas if you plant them one by one, just where you think they're going to go, you might then look at it and think, oh, that's a little bit off. So we're now going to spot the plants in positions where they'll grow happiest, making sure they've got enough room between them and that they're not too far back so they'll get too shaded by the hedge. And yeah, let's have a play and see what we can work out. Now then, this eucalyptus is in the biggest pot, and it's going to be probably the thirstiest plant that's going to grow the biggest. So I'm actually going to put it at the bottom of the border, set back from the hedge, where I can leave it to have a little bit more room than all the others. And also, with it being at the bottom of the border, my allotment actually slopes quite gradually, but it means that that lower part is going to be the wetter part of the soil rather than the top, which will be quite hot and dry. In theory, it should have more moisture at the bottom end, so we're going to put it at the bottom. As for the Pittosporums, I'm going to be spacing these fairly generously at about 1 metre, 1.2 metres apart, because I want them to have room to grow, but equally in time you've got to remember that this is going to get to about 2 metres wide if you want it to, so you just got that to bear in mind. So I'm going to be placing it about 1.5 metres away from the eucalyptus. Somewhere there will do for now. We can play around with it in a bit. Alright, so I've now spotted my plants. We've got Eucalyptus at the bottom, followed by Pittosporum Elizabeth. Got the ferns at the front, they'll nicely fill in. Could do with a couple more, to be honest. Mr. Robin there, singing his heart out. What do you think, huh? He's saying, keep on digging, I want some more worms. So yes, then they've got the Pittosporum tenuifolium, the Spiraea, and the second Pittosporum up there as well. And I have actually just found another shrub, which I forgot I had. It's in that area where you intend on planting things and then never get round to it. But it's a type of Spiraea that has pink flowers. It only grows to about 60 centimetres in height. But this one, it says it has burgundy colour foliage in the autumn, which really interested me, and especially because it doesn't grow too tall. That's going to sit there at the top of the plot, where I've left some space. Up there is going to be where I plant the Diablo plant once I get one. So I mean, I know it looks quite spaced out and like there's not going to be very much plant, but they're going to need the room, guys. Don't forget, plants grow. I'm pretty happy with my placement. I might just grab a quick cup of tea and come back to it in 5-10 minutes. Just make sure I'm still happy with that positioning, and I'll come back to you in just a moment when we start the planting. So first up, it's time for the eucalyptus, but I'll be planting each of these shrubs in exactly the same way. I'm going to dig a nice big hole first of all. Whoops, well, it's out of the pot now. I can just see where that rim of that pot was left in the ground. So I'm going to use that as my mark, my guide on where my hole is to dig. I'm not worried about these bulbs. They'll go back in the ground when we're done. A common mistake I often see with people is that they don't plant their plants deep enough, but also at the same time you don't want to plant it too deep. And when I say it's not planted deep enough, is when you can see the top level of the shrub, the soil that's around it, and it banks up and creates a bit of a mound, a bit of a hill, and then it goes down into the soil. And that's not what you want, because that means the plant's going to dry out, and the roots won't get down enough because it won't be in the soil properly. So do make sure you're digging it to the right level. And also you don't want the hole to be cone shape quite often. See, at the minute I've still got quite a lot around the sides to take out. And if you don't loosen up those sides, then the roots can just coil round and round and round and not actually go down or into those sides. Particularly if you've got quite heavy clay soil, you need to get them roots down. Right, let's see how that looks. Yeah, see, that's pretty much at the perfect level, because you don't want to be planting it deeper than that too much, but because I want to get some compost in here to backfill it, I'm going to go down a little bit more. Now, just to get the roots off to the best start possible, I'm putting in some compost into the planting hole just to enrich the soil and give those young roots something nice and soft to root into. This is just a multi-purpose peat-free compost. You don't have to put too much in. But this is where, if you've got really heavy clay soil, you really want to get your soil right. Give them the best start possible. There we are. Now, into that planting hole, I'll be adding a good generous handful of this blood, fish and bone, again just to boost it with nutrients to get them roots down and into the ground. If you've got quite clay soil, it's a good idea just to use your fork and really fork the bottom of that hole to make sure you're getting some air pockets and breaking up any compact soil. Now, before I plant it, I'm actually going to water this planting hole with a good can of water, because that soil down there is going to be quite dry compared to the surface. And then we're just going to wait for that to drain. Okay, and we'll pop our eucalyptus into the planting hole. And this is where you get to play and just check that, you know, it's facing the right direction. Plants often have a front and a back, their best side and their worst side. So you just got to check you're happy with its position. Remember, once it's planted, you don't really want to be getting it out of the ground again. I quite like that. Let me just step back a sec. It's back to the right. There we are, that'll do. I'm going to use a bit more of this multi-purpose compost just down them sides. Now I'm going to get all that topsoil back in and around the plant, especially all down those cracks. And this is where your feet come in really handy, because it's really important to firm your shrub in. And what that means is using the heel of your foot, pushing it right down so all that soil goes down those cracks and you're making contact with your shrub and the soil below it. So go all the way around. Don't worry about being too hard. You really need to get this firmed in well. All around those edges. I'll go back again with some more soil. Do make sure that you've not got the soil banked up too much around the base of the tree or the shrub. You don't want to cause rot around there. Now, once that's in, all that's left to do is give it a really good drink. I'm thinking 2 or 3 cans of water, and then we're going to mulch it. But I won't be doing that until they're all in the ground. So that's the process that I'll be repeating throughout the rest of this border. If you've got lots of roots, they're a bit congested and a bit root bound, you can gently tickle them and tease them a little bit just to help them get into their new planting position. But you shouldn't need to worry about this too much unless your plant is severely root bound, but that's giving it a great start to get up and go. Now the shrubs are in. I did actually end up removing the smoke bush that was right at the top corner because I think it's just going to get too wide. They tend to grow much wider than they are tall, and I think I'm going to save that space for the Diablo when I find it, and put the smoke bush perhaps at the top of the allotment, behind my top borders over here where I've got a lot of sort of space, and also it'll get a little more sunshine, and that sunshine will help it flower better and make the colour of the leaves much stronger and darker as well. So now that they're all in and watered, I'm going to mulch the soil with some peat-free compost, and then we're going to top that with some bark chip as a bit of decorative finish, but also to help suppress the weeds and to keep in that moisture as well, particularly in the summertime. You know, mulching is just a fantastic way. Hello Robin, look at him. Excuse me, is that on my tripod? What are you doing? So yeah, almost there, just the last finishing touches now. Ta-da! It's all done. I love it. The plants are all in, mulched and watered, and now I'm feeling pretty warm. So in terms of their aftercare, what will I be doing now? The key thing is to make sure that they're watered, because our springs and our summers are getting increasingly warm and dry, and these guys haven't yet got their roots into the ground, so they need a bit of helping hand. So if we don't have rain for a prolonged period of time, they need some water, and not just a quick sprinkling. They need a deep watering, so that the water gets to the bottom of that planting hole where those roots are. So I'll be making sure they're well watered for the next year at least, because it's going to take them a while to really settle in. In terms of pruning, realistically you shouldn't need to do any pruning really in the first year on your newly planted shrubs. I am bending the rules a little bit. I know I'm planning to use all this for cutting for the foliage. Realistically, I probably should be waiting at least a year before I do that to get the plants off to a good start and nice and vigorous, lots of lush new growth. We shall see. I'm going to prune it anyway, and I don't think it's going to harbour their health or vigour too much. And it'll be done sort of at back end of summer, very early autumn before those frosts come, because we don't want to be pruning Pittosporum in the winter, remember. If you're here because you're interested in what I'm growing and planting and cutting and picking for my flower arrangements for the wedding this year, then I can tell you that it's not just this that I'll be using as my greenery. I also have access to things like privet, which creates lovely waxy green leaves. I've also got some honeysuckle, which will trail nicely. I'm growing some Kobe scandens, that's the cup and saucer vine that has leaves that are a bit similar to wisteria that I'll be able to use. And you know, it's going to be very early autumn, so I might even have things like hawthorn hips and that sort of thing as well. You know, there's all sorts of hedgerow greenery around here, including all that ivy that I might be able to use. So it won't just be these, but they're going to be some of my favourites that I really hope I have enough of to create lots of nice bouquets. Also, there's going to be things like the grasses that I'm growing from seed. But yeah, this video is just about the shrubs that I've been planting. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Do subscribe if you want to see how this border looks in a few months' time. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.